We've actually filled this room almost completely. Very nice. So the next talk coming up is going to be from Alex and Ricardo, and they're going to tell you a bit more about... don't... it's not a bet yet. And they both have experience in software engineering, and they're both working for JDriven, so they're a pretty good tandem in that. And they're going to be speaking about a topic that is frankly close to me, which is a SRE topic or a DevOps topic, and how we can basically observe infrastructures better using OpenTelemetry. So I'm just going to leave the word to the guys, and let's have a round of applause for them.
Thank you. Yeah, so I will try to pronounce your last name. Is it Chatzizacharias?
No.
Oh. Moving on. So how many of you were at the talk by Nicolas yesterday about OpenTelemetry? Ah, nice, nice. Okay, so maybe there's going to be a bit of overlap, but I hope we also have some new stuff for you guys. And hopefully we don't say anything that's in conflict with what Nicolas said. No? No?
Yeah,
so far. Yeah, so who are we? Yeah, as we were already introduced, this is Alexander, and my name is Ricardo. Yeah, so we have sort of a different background, but we ended up sort of in a similar place, where Alex is from the inferior Greece. I come
has
from
anybody,
Italy.
Wait. Has anybody, who here has been to Greece? Who here has been to Italy? Which one is better?
Clearly Italy.
I mean, one country has beaches. Anyway.
We have beaches.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so in terms of programming, Alex has a .NET background. Yeah. I have a Java background, but we both ended up with Kotlin. And
yes.
Yeah, there we agree that that's a better language.
That is a better language on the GVM.
On the GVM. Nowadays, we both work at JDriven, where we, like we're already introduced, we do awesome stuff with software. But let's talk about operational excellence. Of course, there's a nice definition for this. It's about some principles and tools that are focused on creating like continuous improvement and like delivering value to customers and improving that value stream to the customer. Well, if you read this, of course, it's like a very management style quote with a lot of opportunities to sell very expensive courses and books. But I mean, we are developers, so we are pragmatic, right? It's like, what does this mean for us? Well, for me, it means that we are caring about our customers, caring about our production environment, that everything is running smoothly, that our customers are happy, and that we're not just like churning out features one after another, and not caring how it's running in production. You know, like we want that the product we're creating is like running smoothly, it's making people happy, and that makes us happy, right?
So maybe a quick question. Who here is a backend engineer? And do you have like an infra team above you or something like that that typically does deployments? Who here has that? Okay. So who really recognizes himself in these, with these qualities? So being proactive. Okay, a couple of people. I mean, I can say I work with Ricardo at the same project, and he's definitely like that. It's very irritating. Because I'm not like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's some friction nowadays. Like, I want things to work.
I want things to be pushed.
Yeah, so yeah, like Alex mentioned, it's about being reactive and proactive, depending on the situation. You know, like when stuff goes wrong, I mean, we can never prevent everything. When it goes wrong, we need to be able to react quickly to it. But at the same time, we can also be proactive, like preventing things from going wrong. So that typically I clean up Alex's mess or prevent Alex's mess from reaching production.
There is no better place to test than production, right?
Sure. So yeah, this is what happens when we go like in Alex's direction. Yeah, this is definitely something you don't want to see on your Slack. So yeah, then we were like, okay, we create alerting, right? But I mean, just having alerting in place also is not enough. You have to have the right mindset and you have to act on it. So this is already better, right? They noticed something went wrong, but we were already on it. We were already fixing it, and by the time that they reported it to us, it was already in progress. Of course, you want to prevent them from seeing it, but we know in reality it's not always possible. So how do we achieve that? Well, one of the things needed is a proper observability of your environment, and I will get to the term observability later. It's about limiting the unknowns. You want to know what's going on in your system. You don't want to know how it works, like how the different components interact, how things can go wrong when something happens, and how to fix that, right? So observability, or O11Y, as some people prefer to say it. I think you're not a fan of that.
I'm not a fan.
What is that? So, like I said, that's about having insight into your production environment. You want to be able to predict what happens when suddenly you get a huge influx of new customers into your system. You want to know what happens when you push a change to production. And it's not only about like the core metrics of the system, like how much memory you're using, but it's about knowing what your system can handle in terms of both technical, but also like in terms of business requirements.
So in the Netherlands, microservices are really big, right? Everybody is doing it.
It's starting to decline, but yeah.
Thankfully, finally. So who here is doing microservices, stuff like that? Okay, almost half. Who here likes microservices and stuff like that?
A bit less.
Considerably less.
So the others are using monoliths, or no monoliths, yeah?
A little bit.
Depends on the definition.
There's this nice term, distributed microservices, or distributed monoliths, I mean, sorry.
So when people talk about observability, often they mention the 3 pillars of observability. And I put it between quotes because maybe it already shows that I'm not really agreeing with the term pillars. But you have logging, metrics, and tracing, right? I mean, we all know it. Like logging is the thing that you go through the moment your application is not responding anymore. You can have like a talk alone about how to do logging properly, but we can all agree, I think, that this is like one of the logging messages you do not want to see in your production system. And if you get an out-of-memory exception, for example, if you have proper metrics, you can trace that earlier, right? You can see, for example, the memory of your application increasing. So in terms of metrics, you do other kinds of measurements, like basically numbers that go up and down, you might say. Right?
You might say. Or down in our case, but...
And then you also have tracing, like, okay, how does a request of a customer go through your system? So, for example, in this case, we were able to detect, like, hey, this endpoint is a bit slow. Why is it slow? Well, because it's doing a number of calls to our database, which was basically like the typical Hibernate problem that happens occasionally.
Who here works in Java or with a JVM? Okay. Are the .NETers a couple? Right. Python? Okay, interesting. JavaScript, Node.js, and that kind of stuff? A couple guys. Okay, so quite diverse group. So who here feels that they have this really down and they have configured it perfectly and they see everything that is happening in their systems? Two people. Nice. Congratulations.
So they're here to learn.
No, it's definitely something that we're also chasing every single day in our project. And every single day we have more things that we wish we would have seen, but we didn't see, and then we're chasing and looking and trying to solve a murder mystery, as the previous slide showed. Yeah.
So, yeah, like I mentioned, like 3 pillars. As we all know, if you have 3 pillars, you don't have a temple yet. So,
is that a Greek temple?
would you call this a temple? I mean, it only has pillars. yeah, so just having these three things in place doesn't mean that you have proper observability and you can answer all the questions, right? I mean, it's not enough to just have the metrics, the login and tracing. You need to know how to go through it. You need to know what they mean, or you might need some abstractions above it. Like just seeing some JVM statistics doesn't say why your system is not responding the way it should, right? So observability is like more than just telemetry alone. And if you say telemetry, those are basically the numbers we get out of the system, right? The numbers and the logs and the traces. Observability is more like the set of practices that are around this and make sure that you can answer the questions that arise from your system. And of course, that's supported by tools. So I like this picture because it shows a bit of like the layers. You didn't like the picture, right?
No, I didn't like it. But I don't like architecture diagrams. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, maybe that's it. So at the bottom, we see like the telemetry, right? The traces, metrics, logs. But those three things alone are not enough. That's why I don't like the term pillars. You have to store them somewhere, but typically you store them in different types of databases depending on the type of information. So on the one side, you have like a time series database, which is very good for metrics, things that are like low in cardinality in the sense that the key value is not that different, but the values can change over time over a longer period. So typically metrics. And then you have like transaction database, which are good for storing, for example, traces and or business transactions, stuff like that. And we need all this information to, on the one hand, like monitor critical signals on our system. And what's a signal? I mean, basically, it can be the memory usage of a certain application going up while it was being stable before. You know, it can be the latency of a service increasing for some reason. And those types of signals, you need to be able to monitor them and you need to be able to act upon them. And next to that, it's also about understanding changes to the system. Like what happens if we push this feature request to production? Or what happens when, like for example, your web shop and Black Friday happens? Like, can we handle this? Like, how can you answer these types of questions? Yeah. So OpenTelemetry basically covers the bottom part of the previous slide. And it's about an open way of collecting these data and handling that in a system, or like in an environment where that can be very diverse in terms of systems and applications, languages, etc. So OpenTelemetry is basically a free, 100% free collection of APIs, SDKs, and tools that help you gather all this telemetry data from different parts of your system. It's based on open standards, or they are open standards. Some of you might know open tracing, open census. So basically, OpenTelemetry is a merger of those two. And like different parties came together. They were like, okay, we want to define one standard for this to be able to interact between systems that are basically coming from a totally different background. So it's language agnostic. We'll see later that the language support is pretty broad. Yeah. And it has integration with a lot of common telemetry apps and libraries that are already in place nowadays. So you might already be using OpenTelemetry in the background without even knowing it or supporting it. And it's backed by the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, which I think provides probably good support. Yeah, it is good. Yeah. So when is OpenTelemetry convenient? Well, typically, if you have a diverse tech landscape, for example, if you're doing microservices where the different services have different languages, or when you want to be vendor agnostic, for example, because if for some reason you have some tool that you buy to do your telemetry stuff and your observability, and they decide to increase the price like threefold or something, like, do you have a way to replace that? If you have a microservice landscape and you need to like change something in every service because you're switching to a different type of service, that can get pretty annoying. So it's basically a way of abstracting away those kinds of things into a single language.
So would you say that you wouldn't use OpenTelemetry if you had only a Java microservice distributed system?
Maybe.
That's our favorite answer, isn't it?
It depends. One tool can be enough. Like for example, if you have a homogeneous tech landscape, you only have one service, like Alex says, and you have a tool in place, and it answers all the questions I previously talked about. It might be enough. And maybe, like I said, maybe you're already using it without knowing it. Like a lot of the large telemetry tools out there already have OpenTelemetry support. So like maybe your tool that you think is very like locked into a specific vendor is easily replaceable already. So yeah, as I mentioned before, the implementation status. Yeah, we saw that there were like a diverse group of people in the room like, using different languages. So you can see for your own language how stable the support is. But typically, traces, metrics, and logs are pretty well covered in most languages. Some are still a bit in development. And they have also, like, there are more specifications on the way. So for example, application profiling is also something that's typically interesting if you want to measure performance in your applications. There's also a standard coming out to support profiling, so that profile tools can be interchangeable as well. And they're also working on real user monitoring. So I don't know, maybe you guys know something like post-hoc, where you can trace the way a user was using your system, all the way through how they were interacting in the browser with your website. Stuff like that's also coming into a specification, so that those tools are also more.
So are there any Rust enthusiasts here? Two.
Sorry, man.
Soon.
So are there performance costs to like having all this observability in place? You can imagine, like, if you trace everything, if you log everything, if you have like tons of metrics that you need to gather, that it can have a certain impact on your system. And I say yes, it's worth it. And there's a famous quote by myself: if you're heading towards disaster, you don't want to go faster. You know, like, what's the point of having performance if it like crashes hard? You know. And also, one thing that my good friend Ties over here mentioned yesterday is like, how do you even know you have performance issues if you're not measuring it? You know, so that's a good point. And also, it doesn't need to be fixed, the amount of observability in your system. You know, like at some point you get confidence in your system. You know, some parts are running smoothly, and you can tone it down a bit in terms of measuring things. Doesn't mean that at some point, like, you get overconfident, you're like, I don't need anything at all anymore, you know? Like, some things you need to keep measuring. But, for example, in terms of tracing, if you have a new feature and you know that, okay, there's like, going to be some limited number of requests coming in, you might say, I want to measure everything to see how it works. And then over time, when you see, like, okay, it's performing well, it's doing a thing, you can tone it down and you can start, for example, doing sampling. So you measure every X request, for example, or only the ones that end up in a failure, or like you can play around with that. So I want to give you this message saying, like, don't think like the moment you put a log message in your system that it needs to stay there for always on the same level, you know? Like, you can start out with a lot of logging and then tone it down when you get more confidence into your system or the new feature. So let's take it into practice.
Yeah, we're gonna try to generate some traces, and we're going to need your help to generate hopefully a lot of traces.
Yes.
And logging and stuff. I hope internet will hold. I hope our systems will hold.
If not, we'll have the traces and logs.
Then we'll know what went wrong, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So who here knows Flappy Bird? The game, you know, it goes up and down. You know, so that is what we'll be asking you to play in a little bit. We call it Tracy Bird, out of tracing. Yeah.
Yeah. So the architecture we're using for this system is basically this. We have a Kubernetes cluster where we have a number of services, We chose Kotlin and .NET because, well, I mean, pretty straightforward.
Yes.
So we have a persistent service that could have been a database, but we were like, it's easier to just have an in-memory persistence that we can just easily restart if something goes wrong.
When everything breaks.
The persistent service has two dependencies, basically two dependents, let's say, two applications that are reading from and writing to this persistent service. One is a Kotlin backend that's used as a backend for the game that you are about to play. And the game Tracy Bird is just static HTML, basically, right? Yeah. And we have a .NET backend that is used by us as sort of like an admin interface, you might say.
Basically, this is set up in this way. So, I mean, we are backend developers, and we love our abstraction layers, right? So just adding abstraction layers whenever you can. But this is set up in this way to mostly just show how you can look through the traces and the logging through your whole system quite easily, hopefully. Yeah.
So how did we add tracing to this, and logging and metrics? Well, we use OpenTelemetry, of course. So what we do is we installed an OpenTelemetry collector in the Kubernetes cluster. Because we have limited time, we cannot show a lot of code, but if you are interested in the code, we will share it later so you can look at it at your own convenience, and you can ask us questions or give us comments on how to do it better.
Or insults, also
insults, mainly at Alex, of course. So the OpenTelemetry collector is basically a separate application that's running, and it's collecting the traces, logging, and metrics from the different services. And each service is instrumented with an agent, in our case, that is, so in the case of the Kotlin backends, they are instrumented with a Java agent, and in .NET, it's a .NET agent that gathers the information from the services automatically and pushes it to the collector. And those agents, typically, like without any config, or with hardly any config, it already gathers a lot of metrics and traces and the logging automatically. So there's, like for the baseline, there's not much config needed even. It's pretty easy to set up. And you can add to it, for example, if you want more like business-specific metrics, there are ways to expand on that or like, configure it, make it custom. And in our case, because we wanted just one solution for all the logging, metrics, and tracing, we used Grafana Cloud, which gets the information from the OpenTelemetry collector, and uses, I think, Loki for the logs, Mimir for the metrics, and Tempo for the traces.
Yes.
They like their Norse gods, right?
They do like their Norse gods.
Yeah. We created some dashboards for that. So one thing about the OpenTelemetry collector, you might think like, okay, why don't the services just directly push it to Grafana? Well, it's like Alex said, we like abstracts, like abstractions, and but also it provides a convenient way of like steering the traffic through your system in the right way. Like the OpenTelemetry collector is also like a proxy, or if you have like a secure network, you can make sure that the information only goes out through that single point out of your environment. The collector can also do stuff like buffering. It can filter the data that comes through. For example, if you want to prevent logging with some sensitive information to go to an external system, you can filter that. So you can even chain collectors to say, like, if you have different environments and you want to chain it to send it to a single collector going out to your favorite tool, it's all possible. So it's a very nice abstraction, actually.
Does that exist?
Yes. So it's time to play?
Yeah, so whoever wants to join and play some Flappy Bird, Tracy Bird, scan the code. Don't press start game yet.
Because we need to start...
we need to start this session. So I'll put it back in a bit. So let me just, for the people that are... So who is on the website? Is it working? Good. So I'm going to start the session over here. Okay, so the session is started, hopefully. And then there we go.
Oh.
It's a tricky game, isn't it? So I see some people have some deaths already. Nobody has passed the first hurdle yet.
I told you we should have made it easier.
Yeah, I'm a hardcore gamer myself.
I'm not.
Wait, I'm going to join. So
I think you invertly, you sorted ascending.
maybe,
the top
maybe.
Okay, let's have a look
But
at the dashboard.
thankfully, these are our
look.
dashboards. So we generated 126 deaths in less than a minute. The high score of 3.
Yeah, I think it needs to update because the high score is at 8. If we look at the logging, it's 8. So I think the high score will update in a moment.
Okay.
I hope.
So wait, let's. So this is still going on.
Yeah, I think you sorted the top score ascending. So yeah.
I told you something was going to go wrong. So let's put it like this. So you can see that people are nice tapping. Some people are surviving quite long, even from the looks of it. Yeah, we can see our average request duration is going up as well.
Oei, yeah, the system is getting...
1,000 deaths. So I don't know if somebody knows the Dark Souls games. I'm a big fan, so you can see that here. So you can see the traces coming in very nicely.
If you refresh manually... oh, wait, it's refreshing. Okay, nice.
Yeah, it's refreshing, right?
Yeah. Can you scroll to the right here a bit? The one? Yeah, so you can see the logging is ahead of the metrics in this case. But,
nice. This is working surprisingly well, isn't it? All right. So yeah, I think we generated quite some traces.
Yeah, and logs. And
logs.
So you can typically see like an interesting thing, like the moment your application starts to gain a lot of traction, that the request duration goes up. I mean, here's still like 20 milliseconds, so it's okay. But you know, like you can see the impact that the users are having on your system and the
so
amount of death.
Before today, the max user load that we tested with was 2.
Yeah. And it was working pretty well.
With 2, it worked really well, didn't it?
But let's see who has the high score. Nicola. Where's Nicola?
Nice.
Congratulations. So,
do you play a lot of games by any chance? Yeah.
All right, so let's have a look at his trace then. So what you can do, for example, is take the top one or whatever. That's fine. You can see that the logging is also augmented with some key value pairs. So that, that's all out of the box. We didn't configure anything for that. And we're going to go to explore.
Yes.
So what we did is we copied the trace ID of the logs and we enter it there, shift enter, and voila, we see the request that Nicola made when he created his monster score
of 10. Very nice.
And you can see that the Kotlin backend posted something, and we got it in our controller, and we sent it through to the persistence service, and you can see the nice traces and spans. Yeah. So it is all like out of the box with almost zero configuration. So that's it's pretty awesome.
That's really cool.
I can understand that you're very interested in seeing code, but like I said, we had limited time, so we couldn't show a lot of code. But we will share the slide with the GitHub link later, so you can have a look. And,
so you see a lot of errors. So those are the deaths. So we log the errors, the deaths as errors, and as you can see, I don't know. Maybe I should tune it down, make it a bit easier. Should we make the game
Greece
easy?
is really failing, I see.
Who did that? But should we make it easier for next time, or no? Right?
Says Nicola.
Yeah. So this is really nice, and what's also really fun to me is that you can do things like, if you have something like that, create a dashboard with your high score and your total is and things like that out of your Grafana dashboards. So it's really flexible. You can just create whatever dashboarding you want out of your metrics, out of your traces, and things like that.
It doesn't just have to be like JVM memory, boring stuff. Make it fun, right?
Make it fun. That is something I do say a lot during my sessions. having fun is the most important thing at our job. It is really my humble opinion. And if you can add some dashboards like this to make your everyday work a little bit more fun, that's worth it for sure.
Yes. So
All right.
Let's go to the final words.
Yeah, I think so, because we don't have a lot of time left.
Yes. Yeah, so there are many ways to achieve operational excellence, like we defined. I think for us, the most important thing is that you find your own way, find a way that works for you, and that's applicable to your situation, because there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But in this sense, OpenTelemetry really helps to connect all the different parts together. Just make it work for you, right?
Yeah, and I mean, even the thing, operational excellence as itself, as a term, you know, you can wiggle a little bit with the definition. Just find something that works for you, and well, you have fun with.
So thank you for attending.
Yes.
I think we have
2 more minutes.
Two minutes for questions.
Yeah. So the backend, by the way, the slides are on the top link. All the backend code of the .NET and Kotlin and the persistent services are on GitHub. And if you want to hook up with us on social media, you can try. We're not very active, but that's where you can find us.
We respond to messages.
We will respond to messages, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if you have any questions, we have a couple of minutes.
Sorry.
Hello.
Hi.
Thanks for the great presentation and a hard game. What do you think, at which point in our stack we should start tracing requests? So you started with your backends with Kotlin and .NET, but there are like other infrastructure services before that user request hits before our backend, like load balancers, proxies, and etc.
Yeah, good question. I think you should start tracing as soon as possible. What we didn't do here was tracing from the front end, but that's also possible with OpenTelemetry. The reason we didn't do it because we just made a static HTML without any fancy front end framework. So OpenTelemetry does have support. For example, if you have a node server or let's say a rich web application. And in terms of infra, I think that's also a very good thing to measure. So for example, in our case, the OpenTelemetry collector also collected data from the Kubernetes environment. So we also have like Kubernetes infrastructure metrics, which can also, of course, indicate where, like, when things can go wrong or like where there are like delays, stuff like that. So yeah, if your API gateway, for example, supports it, I would definitely incorporate it, because if some request is slow for some reason, and your backend claims it's fast, then yeah, you want to be able to trace where it comes from, right? So if it has support, definitely go for it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm interested in, did you have a case where one user action on a front end on website generates calls multiple endpoints, and do you have a need to look that action as a logical, unit and log it and trace, to see what the user action is causing the.
You mean like a UI action, like the
yeah?
Okay.
I don't have a specific example for a user action, but I do have another example that, because I did a project at the Port of Rotterdam, where we have a management system that tracks all the ships going through the port. And there was a case where we were following ships that basically the ships were reporting their position. And when the ship passed a certain boundary, it generated an event in our system like, hey, the ship is now passing this point, so something needs to happen. So the ships were sending their locations, but at some point there was an error in the ship system that there were two ships both sending events for the same ship ID. So there was some misconfiguration. So and they were both on the other side of the port. So they were both like interchangeably reporting their location and was going back and forth. And our system was thinking like, oh, the ship is there now it's there, now it's there. So it was like generating a lot of events and was blowing up the system. So with traceability, you can like more easily see where that comes from, right? Like what triggered the initial event, basically, where it came from. And maybe to answer your question more specifically, maybe in that case you want to augment the trace with some extra key value pair information to indicate like what the origin of that initial action is. Like, for example, maybe you want to know which URL the client was in the browser, which button they clicked, stuff like that can be added to tracing information.
Thanks.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
we're staying. Yeah. We'll be walking around, so you just hit us up and.
Greece and Italy at the same time.
And one is better.
Hello. Did you have an example where like one request can produce like multiple events, like thousands of events, and how does this behave in like real production system in terms of like collecting all the traces? Because like when you open like the dashboard, like Explorer, you'll have like thousands like events after that. How can you maybe chain it, or I don't know, put some
aggregate
like reference or something?
Yeah. So typically, when if you have proper tracing in place, that means that one event has a certain trace ID, and that trace will keep going on. So in that sense, then what you will probably see is that there's a trace that's taking significantly longer than other traces. So you can like maybe filter on or like sort on the tracing duration, and you see like some traces are taking considerably longer than others. Then that might be an indication that something goes wrong there. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, or
I was more interested in like how does the Grafana or tools like that handle like when you have really big amount of spans in your traces, like throughout multiple microservices and so on. Like if your message goes, or these thousands of messages go to
over 20
like
microservices or something, stuff like that.
So we haven't tested the limits of Grafana in that sense.
That's an interesting thought experiment.
But we definitely worth a try, right?
Let us know. 20 is 20 is the max. Maybe, who knows? Let us know.
I think we're out of time. If you have any questions, come to us and we will be happy to answer.
Okay.